Hey Crossview Church, Pastor Kyle here, and we are beginning another online teaching series. And for the next several weeks, we're going to be exploring a specific area within theology regarding the doctrine of the church. So in theology, the doctrine of the church is called ecclesiology, which comes from the Greek word ekklesia, which means the gathering or the body, and in your New Testaments is often the Greek word that is translated into the word church. So, the doctrine of the church is incredibly important for several things, and as the leaders of the ministry here at Crossview, it is always our goal to take you back to the scriptures and teach you why we lead the way we do, what kind of organization we have, how we elect leaders, and all these other things that are involved within the doctrine of the church. There's subcategories that trickle down, and it should drive and impact all the things we do. So today, for this very first video, I'm just going to explain a little bit more about what ecclesiology is and why it is important for us to understand the doctrine of the church and the hows and whys behind what we do. So maybe I would introduce this topic by just pointing out the fact that I'm very aware that many of you have come from a variety of backgrounds. When we do our What We Believe class, one of my favorite things to do is to ask the question about who was born or raised or whatever in different types of churches. So for example, I grew up in a Church of Christ in southern Indiana, and I know many of you have grown up or have been in Lutheran churches or Presbyterian churches or Southern Baptist churches or Methodist churches or Catholic, and all of these different environments. And almost all of those places do church a little bit differently. Some of them do it really differently. So when you walk into Crossview's doors, you might come in and not have any idea how we do church, why we do the things we do. And so that's what we're approaching. We think it is important for us to have a biblical understanding of the why behind the what. Who's leading? Why are they the ones leading? And how did we get to doing church the way we do it? So ecclesiology is the big overarching term that talks about the doctrine of the church. And of course, that can be broken down into different categories. So there's things within the church we do that include our mission, evangelism. There's aspects of our organization such as our leaders, elders, pastors, deacons, directors, all these other roles that are involved in or that come underneath the heading of our doctrine of the church. So just a few more reasons of why I think it's really important for us to get our hands around what the church is and how it's supposed to operate. First of all, the New Testament has a lot to say about how we do church. So the church in the New Testament isn't just an informal group. It's not just the universal gathering of believers. There are local churches spread throughout the New Testament, and you can see that even in the titles of the letters that are written. For example, Paul wrote to the Philippians, that is, he wrote to the church in Philippi. That is a place that had a church, a gathering of believers, a local church, if you will. In the book of Revelation, we have the letters to the 7 churches. So it's clear that there are local churches that are gathering in different places. They're written directly to, they're spoken directly of, and they're informed by the apostle about how they are to do church. Within that, we see instructions that the apostle gives to them in selecting their leaders. What are the qualifications of those leaders? And who can serve in those leadership capacities. Paul gives very explicit instructions to Timothy especially about how to go about selecting leaders. And then he even informs Timothy, this is what these leaders need to be doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about all those different aspects, but this shows you that there is explicit information in the New Testament. So if we really want to be people of the Word, people of God's Word, we need to go to His Word and say, what does He tell us about how we are to do church? He has a lot to say about the way we go about doing church. So of course, first and foremost, the way we do church, our doctrine of the church is important because the New Testament gives us explicit instructions about it. So the second reason that our doctrine of the church is important is because it gives us structure on how we actually live together as a fellowship. Any kind of organization needs to have structure in order to be able to survive. So the church is very similar to most organizations in that respect. We have specific organizational structures. We have ways that we do things, the ways that we understand what is the doctrinal distinctive. What are the doctrinal distinctives of Crossview Church? Well, that falls under our ecclesiology. Our church here at Crossview helps us to decide what are our distinctives. But there's also organizational elements of leadership and voting for who is going to be our pastor or our elder, or in Crossview's case, who are going to be our pastors and our elders, because we have a plurality of elders and pastors. Another topic that we'll hit on in this series. So the New Testament has much to say about it, and our church organizationally needs to have structure directed from the scriptures in how we're to organize and how we're to do fellowship together as a church. Along those same lines, our doctrine of the church informs our mission. What does the church do? What do we do when we gather together as a church? Are we supposed to just make it up as we go, or are there instructions on what we're supposed to do on Sunday mornings? Are there instructions about what we do when we gather, how we worship? Are there instructions about what kind of mission we're supposed to be on, and how does that inform the kinds of activities that we do together as a church? All of these things are talked about in the New Testament. They're a part of the doctrine of the church, and we need to understand them in order to be doing the mission of the church that God has given to His people. So, recapping again, the New Testament emphasizes it. It gives us organizational clarity, and it gives us missional clarity. And I would just add this as maybe a last one, but certainly not least. In fact, this may be the most important aspect of why the doctrine of the church is important. And it's simply this. As the church, our overarching goal is to glorify God and to honor Christ. And the way we do that is by following His word and His commands and organizing and carrying out our mission according to what He has said. So we need to know, how does Jesus want us to live as the church? What are the different aspects about how we live together, how we are led, and how we carry out the mission of evangelism in the world to share the gospel? It's a way that we glorify Him through our gathering and doing it according to His word. So these are at least several of the reasons why the doctrine of the church is important, and part of why we are embarking on this journey to study this important theological topic together through this video series. So as we continue, we're going to peel back the layers on some of these questions about leaders, especially who they are, how we select them, and what kind of models we have to follow from the New Testament in organizing and being missional as a church together.